Okay, we'll go into the online learning side of things. LMS, as I mentioned before, stands for Learning Management System, and it's heavily used in tertiary education, in fact almost exclusively. I did a search of all of the big universities and I couldn't find any that don't use LMS, if not exclusively, then a lot. Macquarie, UTS, Newcastle University, etc. We're a little bit ahead of the curve with Canvas. It is something that in America it's taken off and a lot of the colleges are using it. It's sort of still catching on over here, but Newcastle University, for example, use Blackboard, which they have been using for 10, 15 years at least, I think. The advantages of using it, the biggest one I think is it does allow for launching to all of the other systems that we use from a single point. So rather than students having to have 10, 15, 20 different bookmarks on the top of their tab and remembering passwords for all different things, for the most part, we've tried to make the Canvas pages easy for students to access all of the applications they might need to use, generally from their desktop. So that is a really big point. It integrates really well with Office 365 and Google Apps in as much as authentication. What I mean by that is once they've logged into Canvas, they are also logged into Office 365 and they're also logged into Google Apps. They can write an assignment in Word online and then they can literally submit that assignment from Canvas without leaving Canvas. Go into Canvas, just go into their Office 365 account through Canvas and submit. Even better is that we as teachers are able to scribble all over that and annotate and give really, really explicit feedback all online. It saves heaps of time from the point of view of handwriting, and one of the big things I like about it is that they've got access to that feedback that they get forever, really. This feedback doesn't go anywhere, so right through to Year 12, if they've got feedback in Year 7 they wanted to have a look at, they could, potentially. So that integration is really important. As I said before, all the major universities are definitely using online learning. And it is, so using Canvas is a great way to start preparing students for success in that tertiary environment, because otherwise they walk into university and find that all the lecture notes are online and they have to submit via forums online. And those of you that have been to university recently and been through that will understand that that's a bit foreign and it's an extra learning curve that prefer not to have if you don't have to. So we're using a lot of those same practices that they will be using in tertiary education. It allows access to curriculum resources, again, anytime, anywhere. And one of the main things that I like about Canvas is the ability to customise the dashboard and their user experience for them. And it is purely customised to them. So rather than us, for example, building our website with all of the courses in the school on it the students go and find, they are only enrolled in the courses that they are actually enrolled in on Canvas. So what that means is that on their particular dashboard, they just see, if they've got 6 subjects, they just see the tiles for those 6 subjects, plus their All Students page, which I'll talk about a bit later. Teachers can communicate really easily with students, either in an individual point of view. They can send messages, they can set up groups, do group messages, they can set up forums, we can communicate with a whole year group if we need to, we can communicate with the whole school via notifications and announcements. If they've got their notification settings set up right, so that's worth a conversation with students. Have you got your push notifications set on? If they've got a mobile phone and they turn their push notifications on, particularly for announcements, they can really customise that, and they really should. Otherwise, they may get bombarded with a lot of stuff they don't really want, and you don't want them getting an announcement every time a change is made on the course, for example. But if they have their announcements turned on to receive push notifications, it's a big help when it comes to us being able to say, who knows, it's raining, sports cancelled tomorrow. They'll get a push notification to say go to your class, your homeroom, rather than wander around the school for 5 minutes looking for where your sport group might be. That's a really big point. They receive a customised calendar, agenda and to-do list, and I'll give you an example of what that looks like in a little while, and reminders of upcoming tasks. It's all right there in front of them on the dashboard. Tasks can be submitted from anywhere, so they don't actually have to be at school if they're sick, but they've spent 2 weeks working on a task, sick on the day that it's due, they can sit at home and hit submit and submit their work. Allows for very explicit feedback, as I mentioned before, so we can give really, really explicit feedback from the point of view of rubrics and also annotation on the tasks that they submit. And online quizzes allow for instant feedback as far as we know, an online quiz, it's right or wrong, etc. So they can get instant feedback on, Here's you use it really well as from a point of view of evaluating how well students understand a topic. Students can go and do a quiz, and teachers can get an instant snapshot of how well they know the content and really quickly see, okay, so all of them did not so well in question 3, where maybe we need to just touch up on that before we move on. More advantages: students are able to set their own pace with regard to learning. If the Canvas course is set up comprehensively, which a lot of them are starting to be, it is a slow process to get them built. There's a lot of work that goes into getting these things set up to the point where they're completely comprehensive. But students can set their own pace, so in other words, they can move ahead and move on with real work rather than extra work if they're doing well, which also leaves the teacher free to assist those that are not doing so well or need help with. And as we know, different students need different assistance at different times completely throughout a subject, so it's really handy to be able to not have to stop the lesson. Everybody wait while I go and work with one person, 2 people, 3 people. Everybody else has still got things to carry on with. Enhanced consistency across subjects is another big one. We can really easily now share resources across, so for example, science in Year 9 could have all of the resources available to every student. So if you've got one teacher, for example, that's really driven and set up all these great courses, and another teacher hasn't had as much time, the students in that course with all the great resources aren't being given an advantage, I guess, over others. So that ability for all of the resources to be shared across the course is a really big one, and one that we're pushing from the school's end. The All Students page is a specific page set up for all students, and it allows for students to receive access to information, resources, other than direct curriculum. So things like sports information, and Michelle's going to talk about that a little bit later, library, ICT help, live at lunch bookings, all of that kind of stuff happens on the All Students page. And parents can be enrolled as a parent user. Now, I haven't turned that on just yet for a couple of reasons. One of the main ones was I think when we do turn that on, I'm probably going to have to offer a bit of support to get everyone up and running. I wanted to make sure the student group was enrolled and up and running first before we invited parents in. That will happen, I'm thinking next term. We'll turn that on and give you all access to Canvas. So you'll be enrolled as a parent, not as a student. That means you can't submit work. But what it does mean is that you will see exactly what your student sees, except for the submit button. I think just about everything else will be there for you to look at, look through, and work with students to help them out. Disadvantages: there are some disadvantages. A lack of appropriate BYD can mean that students miss out on the advantages mentioned on the previous slides, obviously. We're providing loan laptops for students facing financial hardship. If you would like to take advantage of that, you see the head teacher of welfare, and that can be arranged. We have a pool of quite a few laptops there that we can loan out. One of the other ones is that it can be time consuming. Well, not can be, it is time consuming for teachers to create comprehensive resources, and that means that it'll be a constant work in progress. Good web design is a constant work in progress. So I suppose there's that element that some courses may move ahead and be more comprehensive than others at different times. Students won't be disadvantaged by this. We have all of Year 7, for example, science, are all in the same Canvas course. So the whole faculty is working together to build that course. In the core subjects, they are all grouped into one course, so they're not individual courses for individual teachers, and so there is consistency across the faculties in that way. And time is being allocated to staff, and quite a bit of time has been allocated to staff for the development of Canvas courses at faculty meetings, etc. One of the other ones is the learning curve associated with navigating the LMS for students. So some of the steps we have taken to alleviate that include a lot of work has gone into creating consistency of layout, and that was an issue in the first 6 months or so. We had different teachers designing things in ways that worked for them, but as a student, students were going into 10, 12, 13 courses, and while they made sense to each individual teacher, it was confusing for the students to work out, how do I get to anything? So one of the first things we did this year was implement a consistent front page that we asked all teachers to use and all faculties to use, and that's, you might hear students talking about the top 6. The top 6 are the 6 buttons at the top of every course that are the same, and they include the really important information like scope and sequences, assessment tasks, and assessment schedules. So all students can access those core documents and really easily now. In speaking to students, even today, one of them was mentioning that they did have difficulty last year, finding it much easier this year. Students are being provided with training and online resources to assist with getting to know Canvas, and there are resources in the All Students page. They can use tutorials, etc., to get to know how to use it. As well as I know their TAS classes in Year 7 and 8, we are putting a fair bit of focus into training up students in the use of Canvas and Office 365. It's built into our curriculum. So the older students have had training. By older, I mean from Year 9 upwards, because in TAS we don't see all of the 9 and upwards, only in the electives. But from now, all students in Year 7 and 8 will have had a couple of years of using Canvas pretty regularly. So as they work their way through, they'll be far more used to it. And primary are using it. Our primary are using it a little bit now, but much more next year. So the training is starting younger and younger on that front. That's worth pointing out. Valid and reasonable issues associated with the use of Canvas can and have been considered as justification for illness and misadventure. For example, late task submission, and it has happened. There's been times when a teacher mightn't have flicked the publish button. There are a few little nuances that if you don't get exactly right, the task might not be able to be submitted. If that's the case, and we can tell pretty quickly if it is valid, then we absolutely accept that as illness and misadventure. So students are not disadvantaged by us getting to know the new technology. Those issues are much fewer and further between now than they were last year, but we thought that was important to take into consideration. Student feedback and parent feedback, particularly student online, regarding their online learning experience is sought and acted upon, and it has been. The top 6 buttons are all introduced as a consequence of us having conversations with students last year. And individual courses, for the most part, a lot of them have a student feedback section where at any time they can give feedback on how they find in the navigation of the course, how they find in the course in general. And if it's not there, the teachers all do have access to it. Just ask the students to ask for it. It's about 2 clicks per button for us to put that feedback on a given course. And we have the tech support cafe in the library, as I mentioned before. Does it mean that students no longer write or create manually in a word? Absolutely not. Well, in a few words, absolutely not. In one word, no. The expectation often is that draft sketches, etc., can be completed in whatever manner is most comfortable for the student and most conducive to the information sticking, I suppose. But formal submissions are often requested to be submitted digitally. If you think about the last time you were given anything formal that was handwritten, it was probably quite a while ago. I think it's not a bad thing for students to get into the practice of formatting and setting things up to look right in a digital environment. That certainly doesn't mean, I know Hizzy and a lot of subjects are spending a lot of time in class doing handwritten exams, because yes, the HSE is still handwritten at this point, so they do need practice in that, and we're certainly not suggesting that they should never write. And there are some tasks in several faculties that are required to be handwritten for that reason. But most often now that we're moving towards digital submission.